welcome to this episode of the Citizens Chat Show. And this week we shall be looking at two key topics. One is the rejoinder by the Leader of Opposition on the Human Rights Report by Parliament. And the second topic is the public expenditures by this government. Is it wasteful? Is it frugal? Is it living within its means? And with me in the studio this week is Dr. Robert Ojambo on my immediate left. He is a senior lecturer at Kyambogo University and the head of history department. You're welcome to this show.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you so much, and good evening, viewers.
Thank you. And the next Robert is Mr. Joseph Ochieno. He's from UPC Mainstream, and he's a regular political panelist of this show. You're welcome, Joseph.
Poor UPC, but thank you.
You mean their branches?
Their wings like NRA.
NRA is tearing it apart. And on the extreme left is a Council Awich Pollar. He's a retired major and director of external services in the NRM, at the NRM Secretariat. You're welcome, Awich.
Thank you. I'm Director of External Affairs for the entire NRM.
Okay.
Not only at the Secretariat.
Okay. Thank you so much for that correction. You're welcome to this show. And just as a form of recap, the Leader of Opposition on Tuesday presented his rejoinder to the statement the previous week by the Minister of State for Internal Affairs, which was a government response to human rights issues raised in the Leader of Opposition statement. It is now about 50 days since the Leader of Opposition raised 7 key issues. And as a reminder, these issues are missing persons in Uganda, detention without trial for many civilians, trial of civilians in the court-martial, mistreatment of Muslims in this country, mistreatment of fishing communities, civic space issues in the country, and property rights, with a highlight on the Bararo question in northern Uganda. These were the 7 questions posed by the Leader of Opposition as key human rights issues in this country that need to be resolved. And they come from a span of a period of time. They are not just from the 2.5 years of this regime. Some of the issues have been recurring over time. And I would like to start from my immediate left. Robert, what's your take on the Leader of Opposition response?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I am really very glad that I was alive. This is something which would have been very fascinating to read about. So I was alive, and this time I even saved the time from my busy schedule and watched the parliament throughout until they adjourned at 6. I was so much, I developed some sense of hope somehow when I saw the Leader of Opposition. What a great man, and his team. For us in academics, we really appreciate when somebody has worked so hard. You called it a rejoinder. It should have been the main document.
Yes.
The other one should have been the rejoinder. And how he raised these issues, how he dismantled the report that had been given earlier by the Minister of Internal Affairs, almost dismissing all the issues. And the dismissal was based on certain things called their research and working, where I think government did not do research at all. If they did research, they were maybe doing hide and seek, where they were hiding and looking for themselves. On the issues, I will only concentrate on 3, because for me I picked 3 major issues that really concern human rights. The first issue was the issue of the missing people. And the Leader of Opposition came with a lot of research, In the report, they said that they could not find any information because there was no witness. These matters had not been reported to police and many other issues which were, in my view, very crooked. The leader of opposition this time volunteered information. He gave information that all these cases were reported to police. And he was giving reference number, the date, who reported, in which police station. Secondly, some were witnessed, and he picked 4 examples which were witnessed. Some Damrida was witnessed. John Bosco, the popular name, Chibarama was witnessed, and another person who even they did not arrest one person. They arrested about 6 people, took them to a barracks, gave them some little kiboko, some of them, for those who understand what kiboko is in this country, released the others, but remained with the other one. Later, he's presented to police, and later CMI takes him, and up to today, we don't know where he is. So the leader of opposition did very well. On the other hand, I felt very bad for my government, which I love so much, that with all the facilitation that they have and the infrastructure that is given to them to run their work, their responses were so ugly. In fact, if you should have looked at the body language of General, the minister, General Muhoozi. In fact, for him, he was imagining these guys are wasting their time. The demeanor was poor. He was as if he's in a court of law. You know, in court, the demeanor there normally is for people who understand each other. They call themselves land friend. Or at least maybe a military council. But for the general public, it was not a good demeanor. He looked not so concerned. And then he says, our duty is to protect the lives and property of the people. But how he was speaking, he looked like somebody who was for the opposite. And of course, they had a team. Then there was spin doctors like Dr. Bariomusi wanting to spin around issues and move from here. There came the Attorney General, my God, the Assistant Attorney General. I don't know if that's how lawyers perform. Then I'm afraid. He comes and even gives a wrong guidance to Parliament. He says that, Madam Speaker, this matter is going to be handled. That was a detention without trial. Says, don't worry, we are working on it. Just very recently, this House has approved judicial officers. And now the problem has been few of them. Until somebody corrected him, said, Attorney General, the people who were approved by this House recently were for 2 courts, Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. None of this matter is at that level. Nobody has appealed against them. And I saw him, I looked at him, I said, oh, this one also studied from Makerere University. So I really felt so bad. And you know, for us who are teachers, we expect a lot from these people because we think they have garnered a lot of experience. They have they have been given a lot of opportunity to move. They have a lot of resources. So when they come, the young people who are studying law, when an attorney general stands up to speak in Parliament, he's observing to see how he can become his role model. Then you come and give a wrong answer. Then the other person I was so surprised was Honorable Abdu Katuntu, a senior legislator. You didn't know where he belonged. In fact, for me, I don't know why government does not invite him so that he can assist them. He said, you see, issues of human rights are non-partisan. But he gives a very partisan advice, where I even thought that he was trying to quote the law for convenience. He quoted Article 93 of the Constitution. And he was trying to advise on the issue of who forms a judicial commission. This one I was also surprised because the law was very clear. Law was appealing to government through parliament. He was not saying that parliament should form, and law came several times to clarify that matter. He said, I am not saying parliament should form or cause a formation of a judicial commission. I am saying we want to debate this matter so that government can get to know the magnitude of the issue and maybe form a judicial commission. Katuntu was saying, this is not our duty, of course, with a lot of energy and confidence to misguide the speaker, but I was very happy, and that is my next point. For the first time, I looked at the speaker getting into her seat, although with some little arrogance. If she could just reduce the arrogance, backing at honorable members and shutting them up was not good. But I think somebody was advising her from somewhere. I really saw her, because like Katuntu, at first she fell for Katuntu's advice in many things. But on that one, she told that the law has not said so. Then, of course, the other issue, the last one that I want to speak about, which made me very happy, was the mixture which I've been complaining about here, where we mix these security organizations and you don't know which one is doing what, where, for example, military organizations of the army and the other agencies dealing with matters of civilian, of arresting people. I saw it caused a lot of commotion in parliament because I saw the ministers denying each other. For example, the law had heaped all the blame on the police. To defend the police, the Minister of Internal Affairs said some of the issues here are not matters of the police. So they said they are for what? Another honorable member came and said that some of them are matters of security, matters of security, which is under Muhwezi, Honorable Muhwezi. Somebody came and said, no. But there are those which are under defense. So both had to come to answer matters of arresting people. You can imagine, a minister of defense. My students in first year who do political science know the role of defense, Ministry of Defense and the army in Uganda, was now coming, and later he almost took over. He was trying to defend, because under which law does the army arrest people? Under which law? I don't know. The lawyers here need to guide me, and the good thing, I am between two of them. They are going to guide me. Under which law does a Ministry of Defense carry out arrests? So there was CMI, then there was CFC, there was safe houses, which I don't know, anybody cannot assume them. Nobody would want to preside over those ones. So for me, I saw that rejoinder was very good. And two, I liked the debate. The debate exposed somewhere, somehow, if I was a supervisor of these ministers, I would need to do something. And I was imagining, and you know, I'm in that age, I was imagining, if I'm a president, today I was going to call a meeting in the evening.
Do you have ambitions?
He's of that age.
I'm of that age. I'm of that age. Ambition not yet. But I was imagining. Because the job of a president is not supernatural.
No.
It is human beings who do it. So I want to tell you, I qualify in all aspects.
And some of them are very average presidents, by the way.
And number two, I was not assuming presidency.
No.
I was just imagining.
Precisely.
I was just imagining. So imagination is part of human life. So I was imagining. I think the president on this matter needed to put his house in order, because these people are making his government look very ugly, that they come to defend things which you cannot defend. Then the proposals that they were trying to give in this situation I think what the House later started guiding was the best thing that can be done, because there was a stalemate. The government is denying that this thing do not exist through the various ministers. The law is insisting that they are there with evidence. So I think, number one, to take this matter back to the Human Rights Commission and the Committee of Human Rights in Parliament. In my view, I was cagey, but I said this is better than the stalemate that had been there. Of course, somebody can talk about the partisaniness of the human rights, but the speaker tried to raise our hope by saying that they were going to speak to them to do the work. So it meant that even the speaker realized that there is a problem. Then, of course, the other matters were finished on the second day. And I feel it has put us somewhere. Number one, it has removed us from the quagmire that had ensued in Parliament. But number two, I think now people who are driving drones will realize that there is somebody watching them. And if they are sensible, they can reduce. And for us, this is the most important thing. You don't need to see anybody disappear for not a month, for not a year, but years, and the others dying. The only issue that I was not contented was the issue of the people who lost their lives. That one was handled wish-wash. I normally call it wish-wash, neither here nor there. Because the speaker overruled and said that these matters are being handled, and some people have already been compensated. But what about those who have not been identified, and the government accepts that this one lost his life? But number two, we wanted to know the circumstances in which they lost their life. It is profiled, and we get to know that this should never be allowed again in our country. So for me, that was what I take.
Thank you so much, Robert, for that detailed, insight on what transpired in Parliament on Tuesday. Maybe to bring in Awich straight away. Do you feel, first of all, what stood out for you in the LOPS rejoinder? Two, do you feel or do you think that your government is accountable?
Yes, Madam Moderator, my worry is how you're going to manage our time. Because my colleague, the doctor, has spoken for about 1 hour.
Oh, don't worry.
Actually, you could as well close the session and said, thank you very much, let's go. Because it started from the introduction.
I think, moderator, that is not fair. That is not fair. And I respect my senior colleague. He knows that an hour is 60 minutes.
Okay.
But if you say...
Leave that for me to
Let me see how long you will give me. But
submit. I have given you an open check. What are your insights? And you think you are being accountable to Ugandans? It's an open check.
Me, I will answer your question, and I want to go any far. The rejoinder is a step forward because they made a presentation, government replied, and they made a rejoinder. Ideally, that is a progressive step towards the resolution, and we see what next happens. So, regardless of the content of the rejoinder, at least we should accept it is the next step forward. And as a country, we should be going in that direction. However, if you unpackage is a rejoinder, I'm afraid we may be tending towards shifting goalpost. Because even in the rejoinder, there were new demands. I may have to mention them. But those new demands, because a rejoinder should be towards inquiry or responding to gaps that you feel a reply to your issue omitted or contradicted. But I saw new elements coming. To that extent, it's shifting goalpost. And that makes me go back to my position that possibly the opposition are not acting in good faith. And I'd mentioned this before, that the opposition are simply generating issues that will appear in 2026. Because their fear is that the flow of things, the flow of the peace, the flow of business in parliament, the flow of government, and generally Uganda, if not interrupted, then what will they tell the voters? Now, he says that, for example, in one of the things he says, that that the government was being disrespectful and deceitful. And yet, the government response is always institutional. Institutional in that the government does not report really on a doc basis. It puts the legal positions, because you want to put a situation which covers everybody. So you put legal position in your report. After legal position, you put institutions to monitor that region, because a law does not exist as a law in its own way. There must be institutions to operationalize it. And therefore, the third aspect of the report is a decided case, for want of better words. What have you done? And the first government report carried that. And that is what it was. So to call it deceitful, I think it was demanding too much. Therefore, if we were to act in good faith and in the best interest of Uganda, the opposition and the leader of opposition in particular should have first courteously thanked the government to say, yeah, it is courteous and decorum enough to say, we put this position to you. It is good you replied. However, in your reply, 1, 2, 3 needs clarification. And you could see that if that is how we are to move as a country, would be nearing to a consensus, would be nearing to a conclusion. Because there are things, for example, government is saying some missing persons were arrested and they are not there. Already that means we have reached a stage of identification. And remember, problem identified is problem half. So government is saying, yes, so-and-so was arrested and we yet can't account. Meaning, therefore, it's a way of saying, let us now work on that. Where is he? Who has it? And that is it. But then our colleagues want actually to take the position like nothing is done and therefore we stay, the stalemate. The stalemate won't help. But you should also realize that because of unclear methods of work, already we are having the opposition not as united. FDC, for example, they are going to be attending parliament. And then you need to leave new power. Meaning, therefore, that our cry that your method of work and you're not acting in good faith is starting to show cracks. Therefore, the response by leader of opposition is a next step. I appreciate it. It should be leading us to a consensus, because abstaining from plenary is a disservice to the constituency. It's disenfranchising the voters, because it is in the plenary that finally laws and policy comes to its final product. Committee can do whatever they do, but in the plenary, for the passing of the law, you pass section by section, section by section. So if you don't have a representative there, then you're doing a disservice. Finally, the comment that opposition still insists, and which I think government should address, and that is what I was saying, a rejoinder should zero to a point of contention that needs resolution. The issue of trial in court martial. There is a constitutional petition, which, as we all know, a constitutional petition is to interpret the constitution, nothing more. The constitutional petition that was last heard, where the late Justice Kakuru was, said Parliament, by enacting the UPDF Act to allow civilians to be tried, acted unconstitutionally. I'm yet to see, I failed to contact Attorney General whether they appealed against that. If they don't appeal, then that should be the position of the law. In other words, should impound from the laws the provision that makes civilian triable in court martial. However, Attorney General is quoting another case where a certain lady went to court contesting Namogera, the Namogerwa case, where Namogerwa's relative was arrested and put in Kigo to be tried under the act. That was just whether or not that person would be tried under the act. It wasn't asking the constitutionality. And this is where sometimes they said lawyers are being crazy. One case was defining the constitutionality, and the Constitutional Court said it is unconstitutional. But the other case, which unfortunately went up to Supreme Court, was questioning whether it was right to be tried under that act. The judges said, yes, if this section says try under this act, and they are trying under this act, then it's okay. So my view is, and I think government is taking serious, is that we should resolve the interpretation of the section of the law by Supreme Court and the constitutional provision as put now. And the law is not static.
Afande Awich, there are actually 3 decisions. The 2 you have mentioned, the 3rd decision is by Michael Kabazi.
Yes, that is a constitutional petition also. Yeah, that one I'm aware.
The Constitutional Court ruled
yes,
that it is unconstitutional
yes.
to try civilians in court martial.
Yes.
There is a 4th decision by the Commission of Human and People's Rights in Abuja, in Banjul, sorry.
In Gambia.
Yes.
In Gambia, I'm aware.
Bireete and 6 other NGOs versus government of Uganda. This decision came out in 2015, where the court even directed that clauses that involve civilians should be repealed from the UPDF Act because they are unconstitutional and they also violate the African Union Charter on Human and People's Rights.
Yes, I'm saying this because in opening the law year, the Attorney General seems not certain and yet is the legal advisor. The Attorney General seems yet to be stuck in the interpretation by Supreme Court on the Namogera case. And yet there are 2 constitutional provisions, interpretation, plus the Gambian case. So, to me, government should now come out clear. If Attorney General has launched an appeal on the 2 constitutional petitions,
one is not appealed.
It's only one. He only appealed.
The other one, the appeal resolution can solve. That can do.
Before they do, the ruling holds.
Yes. So if
you have a decision that is not appealed,
so to me,
and it clearly directed that all civilians undergoing trial in court martial, their cases should be transferred.
They ordered the DPP to supervise the transfer. Yes. The court ordered the DPP to supervise the transfer. So to me, problem identified is problem half, and to me that is a contention in the matters of military court. The mere identification that there's an issue is a halving it. But the rejoinder in general should not put shifting goalposts and should not bring new demands.
What do you mean by shifting goalposts?
Shifting goalpost is there were 6 issues raised.
7.
In the first petition.
7.
Now, if you are now, the government has replied, and you are rejoinder, you are bringing 8 and 9, then that is shifting goalpost. So for how long will it continue? So you have brought, in your petition, you brought 6 or 7, as you are saying, but may I remember 6.
There are 7.
We can count. There was the fishing, there was the trial, missing persons,
detention without trial,
of political
trial of civilians in court martial, mistreatment of Muslims, fishing communities,
yes,
civic space issues, bararo and property rights.
Those are
7 issues.
7. Now, if you have 7, and in your rejoinder, you are bringing 8 and 9.
What was 8 and 9?
The 8 and 9 one is the 8 and the 9 one was Or even the formation of inquiry is a new invention.
Those are demands.
No,
Those are
demands.
prayers.
The
That's
demands,
a
if you understand.
conclusion. They are not the issues. That's the way forward.
Yes.
It's not the issues.
I will check, but I've noted
for
new
me,
information. Now,
Madam Moderator, you
the-
are suffering for nothing. Let's remove those 8 and 9. We throw them.
They are not there.
so, to be brief to your question, the rejoinder is a good step. It's the next step towards consensus generating. But rejoinder, as I insist, should not bring in new issues, and rejoinder should be seen to be acting in good faith. Otherwise, if you see the tone, he was talking of the demeanor. The tone from the opposition is, we want this, we demand this. For example, they are
that's their
saying,
job.
we want the chair of this to be this.
Citizens
If we
must
are going to
demand.
zero down
Citizens
to
must
dictatorship
demand.
of the minority, if we're going to zero down to dictator of the opposition, we shall not go anywhere. Remember, the rules of procedure is clear. We have the majority. But we are saying, despite that majority, we are ready to listen to you. Despite that majority, let us talk. But now instead, the ability to talk is being taken like a weakness, and you start hearing voices, sentiments that amount to dictatorship of the minority, that amount to dictatorship of the opposition. That will not help us.
I found out which, before I get you off the hook, as a human rights lawyer, even if it was one MP raising human rights issues, do you think they should be listened to or not?
I have repeatedly said that human rights is not partition. Human rights is not a movement versus a noob case. Human rights is human rights. Even if it was one human rights, it must be respected, it must be upheld. There's no debate about that.
Mr. Ochieno, there has been debate that issues raised by the opposition are neither here nor there, but the opposition in their rejoinder presented clear evidence to the issues. What's your take on the rejoinder?
You know, I thank you very much, Sarah. And I want to say this, that for the third time in your program towards the end of this year, I am actually delighted that I'm quite happy to give extra of my time to my brother, Dr. Ojambo, and that to say that I'm slightly a bit pinched by my extremely good friend, Comrade Awich, trying to take a new tone of being excessively defensive or indefensible in NRA. You know, we said, and I think this program ran this very particular, because it's a topic that we discussed before, and that was actually pre the opposition rejoined, and we were interested in how they're going to respond. In fact, as Comrade Robert suggests, they were actually rather impressive. In fact, they did far better. I didn't follow the proceedings, but they did actually far better than we hoped and expected. But that said, clearly, if you saw what the NRA guys had presented as a response, you knew clearly it was actually tripped down the market side. There is arrogance, there is impunity, and there is arrogance and impunity. And the shocking thing is that there is actually arrogance of the regime and arrogance from the ministers, including a military guy who is the minister, and there is arrogance. And we're talking about fundamental human rights abuses, including where some of the issues involved are matters of death, matters of disappearances, matters of kidnap, matters of torture, and in many cases, matters of direct breaches of constitutional order and the constitution, which is their own constitution. So really, I am surprised that Comrade Awich is concerned by the excellent response in terms of rejoinder as provided by the opposition, and he thinks that's the issue. Look, Comrade Awich, the role and responsibility of government, including a dictatorship where parliaments do not exist, is to protect the lives and properties of the citizens. In other words, fundamentally, the number one, most basic, is the protection of the human rights, you know, of the ordinary and average citizen. So, to the extent that you say it's not partisan, absolutely true. But if that as it may be, that a regime that is in charge, regardless of their parliamentary majority or the size of their support, if it was in a presidential elections kind of stuff, a presidential mandate that they have, their job is basically to protect the lives and property of the citizens. So in the event that a citizen has been killed maybe by, some thugs somewhere in a particular corner of Nakasero, it's the responsibility of the state not only to deal properly, but to respond to the citizens, in this case, whether it's in the parliamentary chambers or a press statement in Nakasero, press statement in Tebe, or indeed in many democracies, actually, the chief of police would come out and say, look, this is what has actually happened on behalf of law enforcement officers. This is what has happened. This is what we know. And you citizens, we are rather concerned that maybe, detectives fail to get the details of this, and something has happened, and we regret the loss of lives. That is what happens. Number two, in these very situations, it is actually shocking, and that is how much patronage has gone into NRA, that I would have expected some members from the governing side to say, look, you guys, we put up our hands. What is happening, including with some of our constituents, is not right. We need to review our position. But now to seek a presentation as if to say that, well, if matters of human rights abuse is being raised by the government, it is, well, the governing side can go ahead and sing in prose merely to protect and defend the indefensible in NRA. It's quite unfortunate. I've always said this, and I don't want to go. This is the end of year, and I'm yes, and I'm looking towards Jesus is around. You need to be able to do that. So I not over politicize this. The last regime in this country since independence, for us to be having this conversation, is NRA. That Museveni went to the bush and sang human rights abuse, sang about Museveni, rather Obote, sang about Amin. And actually the other day I was just seeing a clip where in Nairobi, when he was manipulating his fellow Gomles Okelos, sang of how, these guys are killing Ugandans, and that is after the Nairobi peace jokes. They're killing Ugandans, and if they don't stop killing Ugandans, we are going to attack. Of course, it was an organized thing, they're going to do it. It is shocking, and I'm sure some of you guys saw this clip. It is shocking that it's the same regime we're talking about, to the extent that actually you have citizens in 2021, I repeat, civilians arrested and taken to military courts. Civilians arrested and they're taken to safe houses, which I came from. Sarah, just like Jesus went on the cross for us. I went to safe houses in 1987. From an ordinary innocent Ochieno, I have stopped. By that, I was trying to tell Rugunda one time, that I want to come back for them, and then they compensated me. I have not even consulted my lawyer. I said, look, I suffered this so that the Ojambos and others of tomorrow, including your camera people, don't have to go through this process. In 2021, we are still going through this process, and then legislators raise these matters, and they're ignored. And we go to the half floor of parliament, and then we grandstand. It is extremely unfortunate. But, coming towards the end of year, and the manner in which has been presented, I hope that not opposition, but I hope political leaders in this country, therefore including people in the ruling end of the NRA, need to be able to review this position. I think, like Robert says, that I hope people including young Mr. Muhoozi, the General Muhoozi, young Mr. Muhoozi, Muhoozi, the minister, review their conscience. Talk about David Muhoozi, I'll say this. I was advised a few years ago, being given some sense of confidence, that NRA has got new, younger officers who did not go to break people's necks in Luweero, that they joined NRA in the latter years post-1986, and that the genuine decent citizens of this country, many of them are educated. In fact, they really boast about their education, including particularly in Tare. They went through the education, they became lawyers. That even in the army, there are soldiers, who are lawyers, and that for that reason, that these guys, Sarah, get the point, that not only are they educated, but they don't have the grievances of the past, but most importantly, many of them are graduates, I'm repeating that, and they're lawyers, so they know the law. So don't worry.
Both General David Muhoozi and the Honorable, both are accomplished lawyers.
Accomplished lawyers. And then finally, the same way it was actually said of Kale Kaihura, the soldier. And it's shocking.
With a master's in human
rights. Precisely. And it's shocking that these guys take these positions, you know, and it's as if NRA will never die, and even if NRA doesn't die, they're on a mission to serve a regime outside the Republic of Uganda, which is basically their home country. So for me, that is the bit that actually worries me. People like Chris Barumuzi, someone whom I regarded quite highly. You know, he was an early friend of mine, by the way. You know, and I hoped I'd build a relationship with these guys. Chris Barumuzi, you know, David Mohozi, as actually I was told, I was nearly about to pick a phone and call David Mohozi, let my brother, let's meet for tea. That's the latter years. No, let's build confidence amongst ourselves. Let these guys realize that those of us here are real citizens who are interested in the future. And I'm saying this on camera deliberately because I'm trying to say, no, these guys ought to review their conscience and know that the jobs that they have, you know, appointees of Mr. Museveni, but they're doing this on behalf of the citizens of Uganda. And these appointments that will come and go. The risks are that if they don't take this seriously going forward, these are where Ugandans get radicalized. People get radicalized and they begin to look at alternatives. And the alternatives are not good. But somehow NRA think that other Ugandans don't have capacity for alternatives in this country. NRA guys think other Ugandans don't have capacity for alternatives. But when it comes to the question of livelihood of our people, particularly on the 7 issues as raised by the opposition, no, these guys needed to be apologizing. The speaker needed to have been apologizing. The leader of government business, meaning the PM, needed to be apologizing. In fact, after this, I hope Mr. Museveni, since they give them free advice, I hope he takes us as part of his end of year message and he apologizes to the citizens of Uganda and gives us assurances that actually come 2024, we will be looking at a new Uganda.
Well, on the very point you end on, the president, while in a meeting with the political party leaders under the auspices of IPOD, during campaigns, he did say that some of the kidnapped people were in State House and he had seen them. Also on 13th February 2021, and I will play his voice briefly, while addressing the nation, televised on all channels, he did have the following to say.
They are all here. They are all here. Both the 177 and the 65. The security people should make this information available to the public so that this talk of disappearance is answered. Then the ones arrested by the commandos were 2 groups. There were 59 from 18 from Kampala, 11 from PG, 17 from Chotera, and 5 from Nakasongola. All those, their names are here. The talk of disappearance should be ignored because it can't happen under the NRM. Even if a mistake is made, it will be addressed and it will be answered. We never cover up, we never...
In brief, the president was confirming that security had the missing persons. And he read some names.
And the shocking thing out of that statement, first half of that statement, I'm almost sort of being compelled to acknowledge Museveni as the president of Uganda, because I don't. You know what I'm saying? So he's almost inviting me to acknowledge that he's a gentleman somewhere. And towards the end, I begin to say, is this guy a hostage? And then in the final end, of course, like an experienced person for whom he now has to make it the dismissive thing that the talk should be dismissed. In other words, we are a country under bondage. I think there is a total state capture, but I want to re-give it to Mr. Museveni That if you follow that from the beginning to the end, if you understand how states work, possibly this guy is being held hostage by part of his own system.
Mr. Ojambo,
Mm.
a funder which thinks the opposition is raising issues for 2026.
Yeah, I missed that.
The president 3 years ago confirmed that his security had missing persons. What do you make of this ping pong?
Yeah, you see, in history, we have been struggling with the older scholars by the use of the word civilization. So when I was writing my thesis, that word always caused me problems. So one morning, my professor, who is a Tanzanian, so nobody will feel guilty here, asked me, you use this word civilization so much. What do you mean by it? Civilization is a derogative word that is used to undermine cultures which are not powerful and so on. I said, me, I don't use it in that perspective. I use the word civilization to mean people who act fairly, people who act in a fair way. And I gave an example of Barack Obama. Barack Obama, when they were going for elections with the Republicans, there was a lot of things that was talked against him, almost demonizing him into a very bad person. But I watched when Bush was handing over, George Bush Jr., Barack Obama escorted George Bush to his aircraft, and they sat in the aircraft with his wife, and Barack Obama stood there. This plane was flying, and I was watching until it disappeared.
Mm.
He was really watching. He was looking at a person who has been a president for all the time. Although had abused him and his team had really abused him, but he needed to act humanly by showing that this man must fly safely, and he wished him well to Texas. The second example, before I answer your question, is one time Moi, Arap Moi, was one of very serious leaders. Some of us who grew up during that time, we used to think that Moi is the vice president or the vice of God. In church, they would sing his songs. They would sing hymns and put there the word Baba Moi to match with the hymn. So when he retired, Uhuru Kenyatta became a president. And every time Kenyatta says he would go to see Moi, Moi would stand up to greet him. And he would tell him, no, because you know, Moi was a foster father of Kenyatta. Kenyatta, if you go to Kenya, Moi's state house was next to Kenyatta's home. He was given by Kenyatta to raise those kids. And that's why he used to work very hard. So the man respected him so much. He says, no, don't stand. He says, that is not how we work. That's what he used to tell the Kenyatta. You are the president of this country, and therefore you are running everything. So I will answer you that we respect President Museveni because he's the president of this country. But sometimes we disagree with his way of doing things. Very serious matters that involve people's life and livelihood, sometimes he answers them jokingly. And I think his lieutenants have started copying him. You can imagine him saying, commandos went and arrested people. And this is the fountain of honor. Commandos are not supposed, maybe if these guys are rebels or fighting the country, but why should the commandos be arresting civilians? That is number one. Number two, why do you tell the public that you have them, but they are not going through the due process when you are the custodian of the Constitution? So going back to answer your question, according to what my senior colleague said, I don't know here who is trying to craft a manifesto for 2016. Is it the one who is kidnapping people? or the one who is demanding that the people who have been kidnapped be released? Is it the one who is extrajudicially commandeering the killing of the people, or the one who is complaining that our people are dying in very useless things? They should not, people should not be dying because of the party or they don't support. There are so many things. So it perturbs me. For me, why do you create a situation that creates a manifesto? And is it bad? Is it bad? Does this mean that it is now bad in this country for somebody to argue against bad things happening in this country and therefore promise the people that for me, if I become a leader, I'll do better than this? That is how Museveni became a president of this country. I remember Museveni became a president when I was in P3 at St. Teresa Primary School in Kakira in Jinja. And all of us were singing songs of jubilation, ignorantly without knowing. Moto Nawaka Yoyo. We sang those songs and removed our shirts and commanded each other that we are now NRM soldiers bringing peace in Uganda. Many of us today would not want to be in such things because we did not expect that in 2021, in 2022, 23, anybody would be going to a national assembly of a country before the TV to say that a person was kidnapped by a government which was voted by the people. Me, I agree the government was voted by the people to protect it. So I don't think it is true that the opposition is doing ping pong so that they can do a manifesto. I see these opposition guys, many of them are very bright chaps. They can write very good manifestos, but what I doubt is that will the system allow them to even tell the manifesto to the people? Because you have seen one of the problem there is civic space. So manifestos should be given where? And what is the job of a political party?
Anyway.
The trade of a political party is to garner support so that in the next election can get mandate to run the country. And when you run the country, you're expected to implement a manifesto. So my view that this thinking that you see these people are doing a political capital, and sometimes I get you hear a member of parliament in the parliament of Uganda saying, please don't politicize these issues. What is the role of a member of parliament? He's a politician. His job is a politician. If this man was in church or in a class or in a hospital and he was talking about politics, it would be bad. But in the house of parliament, that is the biggest theater of politics. Where, as I want to agree with the comrade Awich, that's where you want to influence things. What is politics? Politics is the job of influencing policy. In simple terms for the viewers, let me not complicate, is just who gets what at what time. That is the job of politics. So people out there who think that this politics is for a few people, all of us by nature, we are politicians because we have something that we want to get anytime. For example, for me, if they don't pay my salary by 4th of next month, I become a politician and start demanding for the salary because I have worked, you must pay me. So this job of saying you are politicizing issues, that's misleading people. The job of a member of parliament is 24/7 politicking, doing politics, because that's their job.
A last question as we break off for a few minutes. Afanda, which says the report, the rejoinder, in the rejoinder, the opposition did not thank government.
Maybe Afanda which needs to go and review the parliamentary proceedings. I was watching. This leader of opposition is the most courteous person I have ever seen. If that was being done by Semuju or any other MP, I think there would have been problems. This gentleman is a very courteous human being. to an extent that even where he was disagreeing with a particular minister or a particular member of parliament, he would first thank. And he thanked. And I think Hansard is there for us to go and review. He thanked government severally. But after thanking, he would say,
He would
you
use-
fall short of this. For example, this man, when he came, you go and read his first introductory speech when he came to make the rejoinder. I think he spent like 3 minutes just thanking the minister, thanking the speaker, thanked everybody. But he came up to give his view after thanking. He really thanked. Unless
But is it also important to
unless-
thank government
unless-
for doing their work?
unless Major Awich, you see, for me, by the way, let me tell you, and the good thing, my mother still lives. I'm a firstborn of my mother, so the age difference between my mother and me is very small. I used to argue with her that there are certain things I don't need to thank you. For example, giving birth to me, because we did not agree. Because why should I appreciate that you did very well to give birth to me? No. Number two, giving me food.
My children shouldn't hear this.
Uh,
But I'm one of the people who think that it's not really important to thank a government
No, but on
for
contrary,
doing
he
a
thanked.
job which
He
they
thanked.
are paid for. But he
thanked.
thanked them.
He's a very
I'm
courteous
actually
man.
quite surprised Comrade Rich raised that, but since we've got to go on break, I'll let that pass. And as I said, on the question of playing politics and ping pong, I think we'll discuss it on the break.
Dear viewers, we are taking a short break. Don't dare touch your dial. Stay with us.
National Water and Sewage Corporation is committed to providing cost-effective, clean, safe and reliable quality water and sewage solutions in urban centers across Uganda. National Water and Sewage Corporation reaffirms its commitment to 100% service coverage, geographical expansion, infrastructure development, water quality, pro-poor initiatives, customer care and stakeholder engagement, catchment and water source protection. Be a water hero. Pay your bills to zero balance. Report all leaks, busts, and illegal water connections to enable us serve you better. Reach us through our toll-free numbers on 0800 200 977 or 0800 300 977. You can also communicate with us through any of our online platforms or visit the National Water and Sewage Corporation office nearest to you. This message is brought to you by National Water and Sewage Corporation.
Welcome back to the Citizens Chat Show. The panel is as earlier constituted. Your moderator, Sarah Bireete, and with me is Robert, Joseph, and Awich Pollar, and we are still proceeding with the debate on the rejoinder by the lead of opposition to government report on human rights, and we shall delve briefly into the expenditures of the government. Fanda, which you wanted to make a rejoinder to what Robert had presented.
Yes.
But also, if you could help guide the viewers on what you think is the right thing to do for either opposition or for government, for any duty bearer in this government, given the circumstances.
Okay. Now, I want to make remarks on an issue that we still seem to be going backward and forward. It's the issue we are discussing human rights. And now we import politics and we say it is the work of the MPs to do politics. And yet, I think it is the same party who had at one time raised that matters of human rights don't bring politics. Raised by the same people, and now when you said, yes, it is not being political, they said, no, we have to be political. Then where are we? The thing is, I appreciate Comrade Ochieno by saying that the crop of the cadres we have in government and the party, the NRM party that is, educated and very competent cadres. I thank you so much. Now, from there, the majority who are lawyers know very well that when you enter law school, when you enter when you enter law school, any law school in Uganda, you will come across a famous case of UPC, which involved UPC. That is the Ibingira case. Ibingira was told, for the avoidance of doubt to viewers, Ibingira, when he was a minister for internal affairs, I think, in Obote 1, he wanted to come up with a law called Preventive Detention Act. Preventive Detention Act was a law meant to say, if I see Dr. Robert is about to commit a crime, you arrest him. They told Ibingira, how do you know he's about? Suppose he's about and he didn't commit. And what is the test for about? Ibingira said, no, we pass a law. They warned Ibingira. This was a matter of human rights. Ibingira went ahead to pass the law, and in parliament, in Ubote 1, they came and said, Toa Wuyu, Toa Wuyu, Toa Wuyu, Toa Yeye. They ended up in Luzira, and Amin is the one who released them.
We still have preventive arrest
So
in the
now-
penal code. Afanda
now-
Wiji, we still have preventive arrest in the penal code.
Okay. Now, this provision, Ibingira was touted a lot to say, man, we told you this act. It was not under the penal, it was an independent act of itself.
Yeah, detention without trial.
Detention without trial.
Yeah.
So now, the good cadres that you talk about, they are alive to this fact. And they know the human rights is a matter of today is me, tomorrow can be someone.
I hope
else.
they
So
do.
we are alive to that fact.
I hope you are.
We are very alive to that fact.
Right.
So, and that is why we don't want to go back and forth that when we talk of human rights, we say whether it is human rights, our work is to be politics, we have to politicize. For us, we maintain that human rights issues are issues that cut across. Politics per se is wanting to be people to be on your side, either in terms of voting or in terms of other moral support. But human rights, we think, is an independent matter that is basic, and we thought it cuts across. And
How
that's
should
why
it
we
be
maintain
handled?
the idea that it is not politics. So
How should it be handled? We have missing persons.
I thought that is the last thing I was going to answer.
Okay.
So I want it clear that the non-cadres that we are proud about, that you are happy about, that who are very educated,
I am extremely disappointed about
and
them.
the
But anyway,
majority
carry
come
on.
from entire school for your avoidance of that.
Unfortunately, yeah.
They are alive to the Bingira case, and we therefore take human rights seriously. Now, about the president's audio
Confirmation.
and video, he confirmed the arrest by the state.
The disappearance.
The arrest by the state, and he said they are arrested. And you know that even under the law of habeas corpus, once you know that a person is arrested and is in a known place, then the law is not applicable. The law is not applicable when it's arrested and not known. So the president admits that they are arrested and they are known, and he knows the figures.
Theory,
So possibly at that stage, he could even have said, go and visit them if you want.
theory of the
Okay.
people he read out have never been seen.
So that was my question. Do the three still appear on the 18?
Yes, they are part of the 18.
Do the three still appear on the part of the
Exactly,
18?
the ones he's reading out.
And that is the one the minister says, the minister is in response said, some people who are arrested, some people who are mentioned on the 18, we know they were arrested. And that is why I said,
He doesn't know where they
That's why I said, problem identified is problem half. So what is the next way forward from there? That these people are arrested, they are on the 18, and government is conceding. That's why I'm saying problem identified is problem half. So we go to the next stage.
Maybe Justice, sorry, I didn't really want to interrupt you, but to just correct the record, and since you're a lawyer, you will accept.
Please go ahead.
The government report read by David Muhoozi, signed by
Otafire.
Kahinda Otafire, on 18 missing people, said they don't know their way about.
Yeah, but they had only identified 9 in the NERA system.
Yes. They are only identified, they don't admit that they are in any
Yes.
government facility
Yes.
anywhere.
3 of the 18 are mentioned by the president that he knows their whereabouts on 13th February 2021 in a public televised address.
No, but I remember reading the report. I think I'm the only one who came with a copy of that report here. The other time you saw me showing it.
But
The report,
We read-
the way the minister
read the
admits,
soft copy.
the minister admits arrest of some people who are arrested. And that's why I'm saying
It doesn't know
that
that it
problem
does not
identified this
state
problem half.
anybody's whereabouts.
Okay. Again, there is a question or a sentiment about the body language, including those of NRM MPs. Some of the body language, I've mentioned it before, is because some of these reports have been reported again and again. In fact, if the government meant to be arrogant, government should have just written a cover letter and attached earlier reports. So these things, some MPs are sitting because they said, but this issue was raised and it was replied in the other report, in the other report, in this report, in this report, since the time of J.J. Odongo. So if government had meant to be arrogant, could have just written an attachment, a letter and say, please see attached report. We have replied to this before. But all the same, a new formatting, a new packaging, a new content was given. And that's why you see the body language of some MPs. They say, but man, we have had this. Okay? Now, if we talk of politics, and then we should then say, for some of us who take human rights above politics, that is above the interest and the process of getting support for the sake of support, whether in terms of generating majority or generating majority of moral support. If it is politics, as Doctor is saying, then some of us wouldn't participate in it because we thought human rights should be discounted. If it is politics per se, then let's say we are playing politics, and then we shall keep playing and playing. And if it is politics, then we shall invite the majority. But some of us in government and in NRM think that human rights is over and above politics.
Curiosity, what's your definition of politics? Is it a game like chess and Rudo?
Politics, there are many definitions.
Politics is a management of society.
Not the sense that we are saying. The politics that we are talking about is how you persuade majority to your views and which translate into votes. And that is not what we are talking in human rights.
That is a propaganda.
Okay?
Propaganda.
So if it is that, should be as such. But for us, we shall maintain that human rights cuts across, whether you are NRM or not. And if we now conclude that the opposition are saying it is politics and it is played by all, it is everybody's role, then we shall play it. In any case, we shall say this politics is not an anarchy. It is not in the national park. This politics is governed by rules. There are rules of parliament. Let's stick to it. If you stay out, you stay there.
Do you think there is any substance in the issues raised or being debated by parliament?
We think it's so. And that is why we have endeavored to reply again and again. Why? Because as I insist, methods or human rights is over and above. In any case, how often we have mentioned the punishment meted to security officers who violated rights. The Makindi case, Wandigia case, the Rubaga case, where the security persons were awarded 35 years in jail. Another was awarded life in jail. It's in Kitala with the opposition that were arrested. Okay? And we are even open said there were deaths. This death, if you can come with a evidence that Kopolo Tumwebaze or Kopolo Kelo did it, it will still earn the 35 years of the life imprisonment. We left it open. The death is admitted, the window is open, precedent of those who were identified, were dealt with, it's there. Okay? So, the right way to go, in my opinion, in rejoinder and in the opinion of government, is that we should act honestly. And that's why we kept saying, problem identified, this problem, then we move forward. But we should refrain and we should agree on a definition of politics, whether or not it separates with human rights or not. We think they are different. Okay? We think they are different. So, the way forward and the right thing to do is both parties to act honestly. I have no doubt that government is acting honestly. So we should not, as I said about the manifesto of 2026. The manifesto of 2026, therefore, would mean you are just raising the issues now. You are not committed to it, but you are being deceptive as a way forward. So how long shall we continue to raise human rights matters as a deceptive matter for for another gender? That will not help the
Just
country.
the last question before I get you off the hook, Afande, and for the benefit of viewers. On 3rd March 2021, Lieutenant Colonel Napoleon Namanya, who was heading the training and operations then in the military police, commanded the beating of journalists, a very light-skinned gentleman. But when it came to administering punishments, you paraded the corporals, all of them dark-skinned, and Lieutenant Colonel Napoleon Namanya has never been punished for the role of commanding the beating of journalists, as the Honorable Chagulanyi presented a petition to UN officers. True or false?
You see, that means somebody may not be exposed to the work of the army. First of all, under the human rights law that was passed, where in the past, if you do something, you put it to the Attorney General. For example, if you're deployed as security officer, whether police or what, and you break somebody's leg, you are personally liable. It even waived the defense of a superior command. Therefore, no officer or man would say, oh, I beat the journalist, but a superior command is a defense. That law waived the provision of a superior command, that you are not going to waive your liability because of there formerly used to be a defense of a superior command, and there used to be a defense of going to an Attorney General. It's the one, I was doing work for Attorney General, so you look for Attorney General, whether I've broken somebody's leg. So the issue of Napoleon and the issue of trial of other officers comes in the view of the fact that there's a law saying, please, when you are going for an operation, the rule is they are given instructions, and please act within the law. If you don't, you are not going to raise a defense of superior command. The idea of punishing Napoleon would be like these soldiers who actually did the beating, they are raising a defense of a superier command. Doesn't work.
Doctor wants to say something here, but just for the record, Napoleon participated in the beating.
But you are told he was
just
a
to-
He
commander.
was a commander, but he also
Just to
beat
say
up
something.
journalists and on camera.
Just to
No,
say something.
he has never been punished. So don't tell
You are amending your statement. You are amending
I
your
have
statement.
two issues which have been rotating on this table. The first issue is the example that retired major is giving. You see, that's why I keep insisting that management of internal affairs issues should be entirely left to police, because police go through that training of doing that, and he's referring to the law. I don't know how many men in the army, not officers, know anything about the law. You have been commanded to go to the road, walk in a straight line. You have seen them on the road. Walk in a straight line, whether they are crossing the road, they cross the road on a straight line. And therefore, where command is more than even you are thinking, and you are talking, saying that the responsibility should go to the person who commits the offense in the line of duty. Many of our people now in the military are not police officers, so they don't even know the law that he is talking about. What they know is the command that they have learned in the places where they train them, Kawewet and others. These are people who have not sat in any class of law. Police have. Police, at least, they are taken to Chibuli and they are taken through these laws basically, and they understand. And that's why a police officer, when I was growing up, a police officer would never shoot directly at somebody. They would shoot either in air or to disable. These days, people shoot to kill. So there is a difference between police and those other guys. I don't really respect them. So if you talk about military police is a military thing. I don't know whether they know any law that he is talking about. Number two, young people watch us here, and therefore we need to put things in record. Human rights and politics, what comes first? The idea of human rights was a product of politics. The politics that had happened in Europe and later generalized in the world after 1945, the World War, when they saw how people had died, how people had suffered and were continuing to suffer, how things had been destroyed, they put together a number of things coming from Hammurabi law to that time, and they said we should never do this again. And that's how they came up with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, from which all our human right related issues come from. When you read our chapter 4 of the Constitution, picks a lot of things from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. If you look at the Human Rights Act and so many of these things. So I want to tell Major that the politics is what produces the human rights and all other things. And there has been a ploy to demonize politics in this country. When something is not happening well, they say that is politics. In fact, most of the things that are called politics here is propaganda, machination, and the other things. Politics is the governance of human beings. That
Can
is
I
politics.
respond to doctor?
No, let's first have Ochieno because we are going to the second topic. Please not.
But I want to respond to this, at least after.
Just
Ochieno.
1 minute, then we go to Ochieno and shift topic.
Yes,
Okay,
I just like to clarify that it is true the mandate of internal affairs is, matters within internal is by Ministry of Internal Affairs, especially crowd control in rioting and even electoral matters. But the Constitution provides that the army can be called in, and that is the window through which it is the police who calls us.
The army can be called in on two occasions: situation of disaster and a situation of emergency.
So
The
who
Constitution
defines
is very
emergency?
clear.
Who defines
Isn't
emergency?
the disaster known?
It is the police who calls us for emergency. So in other words, doctor, I am saying, I agree with you internal matters in areas of crowd control, in areas of electoral
Crime,
management. It
generally.
is that. But it is the police calls, and whenever we are, it is the police who have called us. Now, the other thing is that you are saying that these soldiers don't know the law. And yet they have been produced. Sarah says they were produced in court and they left Napoleon. And you repeated that these soldiers don't know the law. They don't know the law.
They don't.
I would actually give the picture of the people who were punished. Afande Awich, for the record, I will give a picture of the people who were punished, and they are in the same picture with Afande Napoleon, who was involved in the beating and commanding of them to beat journalists. It will be shown to the viewers.
Professor, you have insisted the soldiers don't know the law. The soldiers don't know the law. Professor, you're a professor of history. It is ABC that ignorance of law is no defense. Professor, you know why? If you are going to steal a mango, you look left and right and see whether before you pick. There's some conscience in you as an adult of sound mind which will tell you that don't steal the mango. You don't need to know that Section 5 prohibits theft. No. So, Professor, take it that ignorance of law is no defense.
So can I go to court and become a judge?
Ignorance.
Okay, let me have...
please, I have one thing to say. So, ignorance. Then on the history of rights, you cut it in the middle. That is not the history. That is not the history of rights. The human rights. Did you know, Professor, that at one time there was no human rights?
Yes.
There was only rights without the word human rights.
So what's the point?
The point is to clearly set history on its foot. There was rights, and that is why if you went to feudal society, the right was hierarchical. There were hierarchy of rights. Human rights came after the advent
of past feudalism and during capitalism. That is when human rights came. So it is not true that from the beginning of society there was human rights. There was rights, and rights was hierarchical. The king's right was different from the serf, and it came on. What you're calling now during the Second World War is what is just called codification. Codification means it is already there and putting it in writing. So you are bringing it at a later stage of history where it was just a mere codification of
But
the
even
right.
Even you have left out the 539 BC.
But
Yeah,
you
but
cannot want us in
I didn't put
Let's not
Let's not
divert.
go there. Let's not go
divert.
there. Let's not go there.
It's not relevant.
Let's not go there.
today.
It was raised by him.
Okay,
not-
but
it's
even
not-
that is not the history. I find even
why-
that.
You know what he's giving me?
Yes.
He's called dialectical materialism
Okay.
history.
Let's
So
have
that is not
Ochieno.
history even.
Let's have
It's
Ochieno.
not history.
Okay. Let's have a change.
I'm just wondering how this trajectory and context resolves the questions of human rights abuses under this.
She's the one who
regime.
raised it.
No. Whatever the case is, whatever the history, we are discussing extremely horrendous human rights abuses by an NL regime that has been around the last 40 years and that has committed more human rights abuses as a government than any other political party or organization, including a means in power. We can count and list all of them. It's horrendous, it's shameful, that is under NRA. But Commander Awich, you've got a job to do, so you've got to defend that. Quite clearly, for us to begin to turn this into an academic discourse of the history, law, human rights, and politics, no, it's commonsensical. Governance is a political matter, Governance is a political matter. Human rights is a political matter. But I don't want us to go down there. By the way, thankfully, all of us here are actually scholars of some stage. But look, for the purpose of our audiences, we just want to try and deliver these on the question of what NR regime's track record is on human rights is, and how the political opposition, with their mandate, raising these matters in the Legislative Assembly, went through it, and then indeed how we discussed the response. I can tell you that whatever the case, it is just shameful that we're ending the year 2023, looking back and simply saying that actually come 2021 as it was, or 2020, 2021, Ugandans died under this regime, and to date, some of them have not been accounted for. Ugandans have disappeared, some of them have not been accounted for. We can play semantics of language, we can play semantics of context, simply does not matter. Museveni's record, Museveni and NRA's human rights record in this country is one which is worse than that of Idi Amin. And I can say that for the record. And actually we can revisit this. And now, this time around, because we want to make it academic, I can come with my, what do they call those projectors you guys have? Yes. And then I list them, and then we list them, and then we give them to in this case, maybe postgraduate history students or political science students to go ahead and contextualize, go through Hansard, including that of Grace Ibingira. The Grace Ibingira thing, actually, as a matter of interest, Sarah, do you know what? Because I know which when you put UPC, you think you're exonerating NRA. No, actually, in Grace Ibingira's case, these guys had plotted, and there was already evidence, talking about the law of habeas corpus. There was evidence that Grace Ibingira was actively involved in seeking to overthrow the elected government, which was government of his own anyway. And Grace Ibingira was substantially involved with foreign forces, foreign powers, in that case. And government had evidence. In fact, they were detained. Thankfully, they did not disappear. I'm told one purpose person said that in Luzira, they enjoyed Luzira, the wing in which they were. It was like a 5-star hotel, unlike the lives that some of the people who these days disappear because we don't even know where they are. So that was the case. But look, beyond Ibingira, we must have learned lessons to date. And beyond Ibingira, you were trying to talk about your colleagues that I was trying to talk about. No, I wasn't praising them. I was actually saying that these guys waste our money. And by the many of these guys, like the Otafiris, they had free education, our money. Like the Musevenis had free education, our money. Unlike some of the students that now these days, Robert, are teaching. Some of them will go to sell land in order basically to earn degrees, and after earning degrees, they don't even have jobs. And in many cases, yesterday I was talking to a graduate of education, somebody who's been around for the last 4 years, extremely miserable, Sarah, not far from here, both from a poor space. And you know what? And he says that he was asked for 4 million Uganda shillings in order for his name literally to be included in the list on the payroll of government. This is
At Makere, students have resorted to petty jobs and prostitution.
It's extraordinary. So we can go on and on and on. And then don't forget, we can actually contextualize those as human rights abuse. So for these guys who've had those privileges, to go to terror school at our expense, my grandfather's expense, these guys who went to terror school, they go to terror school, they come to Makere University and other universities, they go to LDC, Law Development Center, they go through it, then they come and get easy, cheap, free jobs of ours and walk in the streets of Kampala, and then they go to the legislature and they boss government playing politics with that.
Politics is very serious business.
Sir,
and on that point,
you asked for way forward, and I think it would be a disservice to finish this session without giving a way forward. Just three very quickly. Number one, I think we need to listen to each other. If we are to resolve matters of human rights, we need to listen to each other.
Agreed.
Yeah, that is number one. Number two, government needs to do their role. They are the ones who have the mandate of making sure that lives
Still agreed
is safe. And number three, everybody should be given his space to do legally accepted things in Uganda without being encumbered the way
that is not defined. The first two is accepted, but the third one is not
defined. Civic space.
The third is not defined.
Shifting to accountability.
The first two is, but the third is not defined.
On that point, we are shifting to government wasteful expenditures. In June this year, government passed a budget of 51.5 trillion. Just yesterday, Parliament passed a supplementary budget of 3.5 trillion. And as we talk today, we have a total 56 trillion spent for government. But this is the same government that generates 27 trillion in revenue. And out of that, 18 trillion is for debt servicing and repayment. So are we living within our means? Is this sustainable? Robert, starting with you.
Yeah, one thing that my government has done very poorly is planning. Ever since I learned, I became an understanding person. Government has done very well in security, in liberating Africa and many other things, Rwanda, Somalia, and so on. But planning for this country has been a very big problem, and this is my reason for saying that. You cannot pass a budget in July, and by December or November, because I know what is being presented now was premeditated in November somewhere there. You are asking for, after just one complete quarter, you are asking for a supplementary of 3.5 trillion. And you know that supplementary, according to our Public Financial Management Act, is even restricted on certain things. But unforeseeable things, and it even gives a percentage of what you should ask.
Unavoidable.
What is the government asking a supplementary for? I was shocked. 12 billion to repair King Fahad Mosque. This is not against my Muslim colleagues.
Where is that mosque?
Gaddafi
Mosque.
Yeah, it is Gaddafi and also Fahad. Okay.
No, Gaddafi Mosque in Old Kampala. Two, to develop agriculture and the programs of government to enable industrialization and so many other things. Now, why did the government sit down to plan in last year, 2020? Because the budget we are running now started being planned in 2022. No, 2021. So I feel planning is poor. But two, I think we run a luxury government. There is no supplementary budget, Sarah, I dare you, that will come and the president's office is not taking.
It has the biggest.
It is not taking the lion's share.
It has the biggest.
So it shows, and for me, why? Why do you think that it has the biggest? We run a patronage state. A patronage state is very expensive. where you have to pay so and so, to pay this one, to bribe the other one, to give this one money so that they can support you. We need to run an administrative state which only provides what it can do. But here, I see, and the president normally says it openly. Sometimes I like him, he's a very frank man. That I'm driving in the village. Then a young man comes and falls on the road. And he says, now, President, I want to see you. I want to marry. What should I do? I have to give the young man money to go and marry. Was it planned for in the budget? So for me, I think our government, the other problem is that it has a lot of brokers. If you have seen where they are borrowing this money, because now we introduced borrowing from commercial banks and money lenders. And now I think these things are being done at the benefit of brokers. When you look at this Lubowa project, because it is also there, the money
2.7
billion is there to take to Lubowa. I really feel that this Lubowa thing is a brokerage. There are brokers there. Then where we are borrowing money, both internally and externally, there is a lot of brokerage. And there are people now in this country who are just brokering to find where money is, and they know that this is a government which does not know how to plan. They are fleecing government a lot of money. And that's why much of the money that now we earn in this country is to pay debts. Debts created how? Because this money, how do you, for people who study out there, you know what a supplementary budget means? Supplementary means that when they were distributing money, some money was left.
There was a shortfall or money left.
No, money was left. So they are going to that money to allow the treasury and the government to spend that money. But in Uganda, now we have to teach new economics. That supplementary means a shortfall. And that shortfall, you are coming to parliament to request to go and borrow, including payment of salaries. For sure, a country cannot be borrowing to pay salaries because salaries are known. And for those who follow, the remaining 19, because after paying debts and all those things, we remain with about 18 to 19.
No, we correct 27.
Yes.
18 goes into debt service.
Yes, the remaining nine
Nine.
is spent on administration of the country. So the local man out there, you have nothing to share on our budget.
Joseph, we have items like Rubowa Ghost Hospital. In the last Parliament did stop additional monies
There is
to
Rubowa and the other
a
factory,
non-existent hospital.
factory of sugarcane.
But the Minister of Health is asking for 2.7 billion to supervise a non-existent hospital, and Parliament passed it. But in addition, we have the two monsters that spend most of taxpayers' money. Parliament, on average, on a daily basis, spends about 2.5 billion per day. State House, on a daily basis, spends about 1.8 billion per day. Is it really necessary? Does State House consume all this money per day?
They consume, and possibly they consume more. But the issue is, what do they consume on? In my opinion, they consume to satisfy particular individual interests. And that's why I say that this country is under capture, and the government is under capture. And this is a Mr. Museveni project. And indeed, as Robert suggests, it's an operation around patronage. It's my word, but from picking from there, he's an academia. So quite clearly that's the situation. But number two, I also want to agree. Sarah, you and I have had some of these debates, including Comrade Awich actually, in different fora, including discussing budgets. Actually, in the last 2 years, we've been quite involved in many of these. And we talked, we lamented. I have been on a fora, including Parliament Channel, a fora, and indeed other networks where we've had legislators, including those. I think there's one legislator invited here who promised that no more supplementaries. And once you raised this, I was looking, visualizing the individual and wondering what they might be thinking. But at the end of the day, they may be also beneficiaries from the rear. I have actually known that one of the things that happened, including some of these supplementaries, is that it is projected that, look, you guys, we shall go and ask, for 3.5 trillion, but you know that the other of the 3.5, we shall use the 2.8 in a very particular way, but don't you worry, we can actually, readjust it and make sure that it is actually 3.7, and the 2.7 comes to cover a very particular area. We shall agree that that's another emergency and that's another supplementary. All these conversations, some of these debates I've actually had, including the legislators, and you know what I'm trying to say. To the extent that these things happen and it's business as usual, tells you of the extent of impunity. To the extent, actually, that we've just been discussing human rights abuses, there's no reason why we don't consider this one of those. Meaning that the taxpayers are burdened continuously, meaning they thieved officially, after their exchequer. They're thieved by having people go and borrow money from elsewhere on their behalf in their names, and they don't spend those money because those monies don't go to hospitals, those monies don't go to schools, those monies don't go to viable projects that create and enable employment for young people. Those monies don't actually go to mitigate major challenges of environment as we face them today. Nor do they necessarily go onto questions of agriculture. In this case, agriculture is mentioned as surely. Why would you consider an agricultural project part of a supplementary when we're in an agricultural state? Agriculture should be the number one item, on the formal budgetary projections in terms of programming. When you program in the initial stage, when you're planning long term, it should be actually ideally the number one. All the other sectors we know are health, education these days, infrastructure, and perhaps environment. It is simply because this is a cabal manufacturing money from the coffers of the ordinary citizens. But I wonder, earlier Comrade which was talking about crowd control. So those are things that come at the back of our minds about crowd control. Why? Because people have been so substantially, fundamentally suppressed that for Sarah to complain, they say, oh, that one is in civil society, and then for an average citizen to complain down there, oh, that one there is getting money from abroad, and then for the other person, oh, I have had cases, young UPCs, and I have you guys continue coming. I've had cases where people said, oh, I don't want to be so that in the open because I fear being kidnapped. Now, people don't have capacity and opportunity to go and demonstrate in front of the National Assembly and say, no, enough is enough. Because Loboa should not be on the table. We should actually be holding people to account on old Loboa. We should be asking people to be arraigned before the course of law in this country. And we should be holding politicians to account, including Mr. Museveni, to account on their involvement on Loboa. In other words, this is one of the other things that Mr. Museveni needs to be coming to apologize over and say that we've learned hard lessons over Loboa. But instead, we are asking money for Loboa when we know the sectors that are gently, badly in need of money today. And where you talk about Maina Gongara Road, we've got councillors who are being detained. They spend time in prison for having been part of an ordinary public organization, for people to demand basically decent roads. And some of the decent roads is possibly not even tarmacking, but basically solid maram like the one my father used to supervise 50 years ago. So it's extraordinary.
Afanda Wishi, the president told the Ugandans after COVID to be frugal, and everybody tighten their belts. But we have since seen the most extravagant government ever since, COVID effects notwithstanding. In addition to that, your government requisitioned for a loan to expand IT infrastructure. As we experienced 3 years of Facebook closure, yet the majority of Ugandans use Facebook. Yeah. Whose internet are you seeking to expand?
For the last question about internet, I think connectivity is over and above Facebook. There are many online work that go on. Facebook is one product. So I think even if Facebook was not there, we still need to expand it. So that is my...
But why is Facebook closed 3 years down the road?
No, the president has mentioned himself on the issue of Facebook several times about some violations to government and to other persons. And so he thinks that it is being used for unjustified purposes and causing insecurity in the country. And remember, the president is the consumer of all intelligence agencies in the country, or intelligence information. So he has more informed position, and that's why it took. But we hope it will be resolved. Now, about wastefulness generally, my view was that I wish we had called an expert, because I'm constrained or restrained from indulging in detail, because I'm not so sure that what appears on the face is what it is. Possibly an expert from the Ministry of Finance would justify this, or would actually say, even me, I see it as wasteful. So how I wish we had an expert, and the absence therefore limits my contribution to this topic. But I was just asking, putting a question. They said he who asks is never at fault. If you want to say, Major, you are stupid, you are better asking, Major, are you not stupid? In which case you have just asked a question. So my question here is, if we passed budget in July, and now after a quarter, we are asking for supplementary, I'm just asking, how many supplementaries are we going to ask?
Every quarter, on average, you will add another 3 trillion.
At the end of the year. So I just put it as a question. And the other part of contribution I needed, since I'd already put a disclaimer of my incompetencies, in this kind of debate, you have mentioned a few, but I would have wanted us to identify the wastefulness. Possibly if we identify, and this being a forum which I am sure government follows, they would take note, because we should not risk being blamed for making a minibus claim, envelop everything into one. So maybe in future I would ask that we should do, somebody would do a due diligence of really listing the wastefulness, so that we are not seen like, oh, they're just making a minibus claim. It's not qualified. Where is the waste? Where can they point where the waste is? Then the last comment on this is, maybe we all have a share to blame, because each of us belong to a constituency. This thing was passed by MPs. Talk to the MPs. It depends on the quality of the MPs we elect. Because you and me agree that when we're in law school, the professors who teach us laws which we think is ordinarily wrong, but the professor will tell you, me, I'm teaching you the law. I'm not a lawmaker. Go to your MPs. Therefore, what is the position of the MPs? We all come
you
from
are chairman,
constituencies.
your party chairman is on record for telling voters that even if they vote people who come to parliament to sleep, so long as they wake up and vote government position. Are you the same person now asking for quality of MPs? Isn't it what you aspire to vulgarize the parliament?
No, we demand quality of MPs. By the way, for us as a party, the chairman could have made an overarching statement. But did you know that while he's talking that, his party has the most rigorous flag bearership campaign, because we want the most competent.
But you are the majority in the parliament.
Yes,
so where is the evidence of quality?
So our flag bearership is competent. We contest is voted by everybody. Therefore, even when we do that, I am saying this is a matter that affects all of us.
Just in clear examples, Afanda Wichi, your president spends 1.8 billion per day in the State House, where there are 2 official occupants, the president, his wife, and their domestic servants, and they consume 1.8 billion per day. This is the cost of 4 seed schools every day.
Where is which source of information?
The budget. The budget.
Budget states as
Just
such?
to go to
You
the,
don't know.
you don't
I
know.
don't know. I
Go
don't
to the amount allocated to State House divided by 365 days.
Yes.
It's as simple as that, and you don't need an expert.
That is assuming, because there are other logistics which takes it. And you
We are
calculate.
saying we are making a budget, an
Yes.
average of expenditure per
Yes.
day.
But that
And
is unfair.
every day you are chairman, it's 4 seed schools. 4 seed
Because
schools.
if you cost that,
Yes, isn't
for
it?
example,
It is.
if in one fateful year,
I am glad you look puzzled.
if in one fateful year,
Yes.
you are costing the cost of an helicopter, which could have been put under office of the president, and you are dividing it by food.
Helicopters are bought by Ministry of
I'm
Defense.
just giving us an example,
It
a
is wrong.
logistical
Your
matter. There are
example is
many
wrong.
logistical issues.
Carry on.
So if you pick one expensive logistical item and you divide it into food,
Comrade
that
Awich.
is very unfair.
Okay.
That is very unfair.
The other issue citizens should focus on is Parliament. Parliament, on average per day, consumes 5 seed schools.
Yes.
So you have the president combined with the Parliament, they consume
9.
9 seed
seed
schools per day. And you need an expert to understand that that's extravagance.
Yeah, that's why I said you need to list all that so that we appeal to the authority.
You appeal to the soul.
Anyway, I'm getting back to
because
members. I
extraordinary.
think
I think
let's have last comments.
I think, Sarah, I think everybody knows that our administration is very, very expensive. If you compare with all countries that are neighboring us, if you look at the per capita MP for Kenya, for Tanzania, for Uganda, and even India, which has the largest population in democratic,
In parliamentary terms, yes.
democratic society. We don't want to say China because for them they don't go into the things of electing people. China would be the most populous. You find that around here it is laughable. Even Nigeria has millions of people. If you look at the members of parliament they have. I think for us, we have spent a lot of money on politics than service delivery. In fact, in Uganda, the most high-paying thing
Lucrative
now
thing.
is politics. That's why you see when it comes to going to parliament, it is a do or die.
Yeah.
And that's why Comrade Awich is saying, because you see, when you are a flag bearer of NRM, the system is going to help you to win. And that's why everybody struggles for that flagship. It's not because they believe in the party and so on. And that's why when many of them are defeated, they don't go away and go and do other things. They still go independent, and they say independent aligned to NRM. So I think there is a very high expenditure on politics, on politics and administration than service delivery. And the statistics out there shows it very clearly. I think some 10 or 15 years ago, the president promised us that each sub-county in Uganda is going to have the following: a secondary school, a grinding machine, and he explained why a grinding machine, because people are moving a very long way. There are many schools in Uganda as we speak today without government-aided secondary school, and therefore they have left the issue of education about 64% to private entity to whom it may concern. Look at the medical services. I was supervising a student who was doing a research in Buvuma Islands. Now, Buvuma Islands is composed of 52 islands with people. And in all those 52 islands, they are depending on only one health center, two. Because the research even failed, because we did not have people to interview as the health workers, because health workers who deal with maternal health care normally start from health center 3. That is the delivery and those other things. So you can imagine in such a country. And this goes to many countries in the world. I mean, many parts of the country. Even those few areas that have health center 2s, 3s, and 4. What is the service delivery there? Many of them don't have doctors, and yet doctors are striking that they want to be part of the money is going to pay interns. They have been having interns perennially. And you wonder, a government which has economic planners should be able to deal with a problem like that once for all. Because this now, it even makes me think, but are these not clever people? Just who are inciting these young people every time to strike, so that ministry can ask for money. One needs to check the 22 billion, I think it was 22. Is it really just going to pay these interns, or there is some money for other things? So me, I think that this is something not we should not say because we're in opposition, or you are not in opposition, or you're a politician. Even people like us, if we are given a platform like this, that's what you have to say then. That service delivery is still very poor, in my view. And it is because you have a resource envelope that is small, but much of it is going on administration, buying things which I heard the other day the minister of technology and something innovation was saying that Uganda is planning to go to the moon. And I said, Uganda to go to the moon to do what? Isn't it going to cause an accident there? Because we cannot afford COVID vaccine. We have to cry that people help us to give us COVID vaccine. We want to go to the moon to do what? Because going to the moon is a show of mighty. There is nothing you get in the
We can't
moon.
even maintain a UPC road.
So finally, I want to
We
say,
are fed to live on us.
I want to argue. I want to
That's
argue
a better line, actually.
that
Sorry.
in this country we need to stop just talking about these things.
Yes.
This issue of coming up with minute districts and constituencies, when I say these things, sometimes people think I'm sectarian. When you look at the 500 and so MPs in Uganda, half of them come from Western Uganda alone. In fact, the members of parliament for Central, Northern Uganda, Eastern Uganda, and West Nile totaled are less than
Karamajo?
are less than the members. Why? Because in Western Uganda, everything that was a county became almost a district, and therefore with different constituencies.
Gerrymandering to perfect
So you find
NRA.
that I was hearing that now Busia also wants to be divided into two.
Apparently, yes.
Busia, if you are in Namayingo, the border is the border of Busia when you are coming from this side,
To Mayuga.
is 14 kilometers to the nearest district hospital. And if you are coming from Majanji, the same. So they are going to divide the thing into what? And the issue is just political, not
That's
service
correct, yes,
delivery.
yes.
Why are they not dividing these Busiros, these Kiras, which have so many people who are many? So me, I think, as I said earlier, the biggest problem in Uganda is politics. Our politics is poor, is based on patronage, is based on regime survival, and that is what you expect. Politics that is based on patronage, regime survival, are normally very extravagant everywhere in the world.
In 1 minute, if you could share your way forward, Doctor, so that I take the way forward for the two and we call it a day.
Yeah, I think the way forward, we just have to rethink our governance. If we are going to take things as usual, that somebody sings a song as it was, as it will be, in my view, we need change. We need change in many areas, including the top.
Ochieno, as you conclude, in the recent international meetings, we have had 70 delegations to the UN who spent 2 billion. Those are 4 secondary, 4 seed schools. And we have had 606 delegates to the COP26 summit. That's now like 10 schools eaten in a delegation. What's your way forward with this extravagance?
You know, when you mentioned that, I imagine that you were very disappointed that I didn't mention them. You realize that actually when you ask some of these questions, even for me, who's rather wordy, I get lost for where to start. And so the best I can do is to be responsible and just try to guide the conversation and make sure that we conclude for time. No, I think in part is really what Robert has said. This country is tired of NRA. This country is tired of Mr. Museveni. And Mr. Museveni just needs to be kind enough to Ugandans, enough to Ugandans, and just let go. Patronage and impunity is at heart. When I read, initially not watching, read those figures of the COP delegation, I've said to this program that the many things that I see as headlines about Uganda, for me, I lived a very traumatic life in exile many, many times. So once in a while, those days before WhatsApp and much more instant messages, once in a while you get things on the internet. And then you see headlines and you don't want to believe them. And once in a while, I go to intelligence information through our networks. And once in a while, you don't want to believe some of the things that you hear because maybe some of these are things which are being geared towards pleasing you, or somebody wants basically to earn a living the other end. Today, with my reality in Kampala, there are many things that I see and I can't believe. That was just I just go back to 2021 because it's about human rights abuses. There are things that actually happen in the streets of Kampala. Let me give another example. I just travel between the studios, to conclude, between the studios and my residence. And I told you guys, and you see the potholes in Kampala, in Kampala. And it's a very posh part of Kampala. And there are ministers who pass there and they'll come and sweep you. And you go onto the road and the road shakes. And you say, why?
How?
Why must I be this much abused?
I spent 3 hours today.
Why must I be this much abused? And then you find people rolling around. And motorists in Kampala, in a way, in Uganda, they suffer those and you see them struggling. And they suffer those and you see them struggling. And rain comes and people wake up at 3 o'clock. Human rights abuse. Wake up at 3 o'clock in order to catch up for time.
Sovereignty abuse.
Did you get what I'm trying to say? And then when there's a space somewhere near Serena where the roads are going, people begin to... So people are now so much in a hurry and said, look, you guys, you've been so patient for 37 years with an obvious, in part because, quote, they vote, these guys. And then when it comes to a particular time, you're not responding. No, I think where we are at the moment, Sarah, I just simply want to say that, look, Ugandans need to wake up. Ugandans need to mobilize, particularly younger Ugandans. Particularly younger. I'm shocked. I'm sorry, Robert. Robert just said, I'm concluding. Yeah. Robert just said that he was in P3 when Museveni came from the bush. Can you imagine? P3.
As in P4. Some 1 year older than.
He will be a professor next year. He's a top lecturer at a top national university.
I was in primary 4.
So can you imagine that's what you've always been saying? So it's been such a long time. God. So no, I think is that there is need for a break. And we need to be able to have a fresh start. But my point is, younger Ugandans need to get much more involved, much more interested in this thing, and much more interrogating about these figures. And I think Awich is right, that when some of these things should be put into the more we actually interrogate the details, the more young Ugandans will find it unacceptable to continue with the status quo. And I hope 2000 and next year brings us a time when the UPCs are reviewing and watching and knowing that history can catch up with them, just like history caught up with Grace Ibingira.
Afanda Awich, do you think your government is on the right track or you got off the road long time ago?
No, it is on the right track, very right track. Now, first of all, you gave 2 examples to show wastefulness, and that's what I'd ask.
The third one is the huge delegations.
The New York and
Dubai, size of expenditure of State House
New York,
and the Parliament.
I want viewers to understand that New York, the delegation are accredited depending on the passport you have. So you have all those delegations for Uganda. But I want viewers to know that the New York thing was, there are so many meetings. Like Commonwealth will want to have a meeting. Did you know that other people flew from the embassy in London for the Commonwealth? Those are accredited on Uganda. America will want to have bilateral with states. Did you know that Ugandans flew from Washington in New York? The regional corporate meeting, some people flew.
The cost?
Yes. Sometimes the costs are not met by government. Like, please, can I finish? You guys talked, I was watching. Now, if somebody flew from London, it could be a Commonwealth expenditure. People flew from Addis to New York. Others flew to New York. So we can
do this by saying who paid for their ticket. Not all were paid by government. 2, did they really go for the meeting? That is the audit point. But if we see in a minibus way, so many went to New York, please, let's dissect. That is the position. In New York, during General Assembly, there are about 300 meetings going on. In fact, a country like China sends over 400 because China will want every meeting
What's
attended.
the GDP of China?
Every
They
meeting.
can afford.
So it is upon you if you choose to miss out in this meeting or the other meeting. But if you are taking the interest of the government at par. So what I want to say is, in New York, there are many meetings, and not all Ugandan who were accredited were paid by
Did
government.
you see the anger by the president or New York delegation? So are you contradicting the president?
No, I'm saying, I want to say this even to the president, that delegations to New York are very many in categories. Others came from London to New York and they may not have been paid by government. Others came from Addis, others came from
What
Washington.
was
So that's it.
documented were people who left from Uganda.
No,
Did
the
not-
documentation was on accreditation. There's a
Okay.
department which accredit. Now, on the Dubai, did you know that Dubai, Uganda is not listed among the biggest delegation?
But how many do we have?
The biggest delegation in Africa is Nigeria, Ghana, Morocco, Kenya, and Tanzania.
And the
How
relevance
many
is,
They are
do we
big.
have? What, their incomes are big.
You know, the thing is, if we can afford air ticket and we meet to attend the meeting, what is wrong with that?
okay.
There are 5 big delegations.
afford.
Uganda is not on the top of the list. Google and see.
Can afford
Sarah,
to
you
borrow.
should ask,
Google.
how do you go to that list? To
You
the
see,
list
say
which
that
went.
Nigeria had, we know.
Nigeria, Ghana,
Afanda, I think
Morocco,
you should stop
Kenya,
diverting
Tanzania.
us. You should stop diverting us. Our question is, as Uganda, given our skyrocketing public debt, which is above 50% of GDP, given our revenue, 27 trillion, do you need 600 people in Dubai?
You need, Sarah, you know
Let's
very well.
conclude as
Now,
you ask.
Sarah, don't you know that Ghana is in a worse off situation than Uganda? Do you
conclude
know?
as you ask.
Ghana even failed to pay their
No,
debts.
the debt
Ghana
debt
is.
selling does not mean they're broke.
Ghana is in a worse economic
No, that's
situation.
simplistic.
So
That's
my
simplistic economics. No.
conclusion is, in Uganda at one time, we had a situation where government would change at will. 68 days of Lule. This one, even during Lotwa, there was Basile for some time. Then Lotwa came in. We are lucky that President Museveni has maintained stability from year P3 up to now.
Which is
So you should say thank you for the continuous and harmonious flow
Which
of
is stability
stability.
when I'm in this
A flow of
emotional instability.
So for us, we are saying to the people, we want service delivery. And we are not about to say NRM, oh yeah, NRM, oh yeah. We want to be sure we deliver services, so that we keep asking for the mandate. And we know we'll get the mandate.
That was it from us to the viewers, and I hope that the viewers can substantiate or can digest Afande's comments between peace. Do we have peace or we have pieces from NRM, given your cost of living as you go for Christmas? That's it from us. Thank you very much.